Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late here. I think this is probably posting a day or two late, but this is it. This is the final video on the Scream Week. For a quick catch-up. I like to make these little videos about films that I enjoy and want to share. Sometimes when visiting or revisiting a franchise, though, I will make videos about titles that I did not enjoy. However, even with that, I try to find the good points in them. Leading up to the release of Scream 6, I had revisited all the Scream titles that I'd seen previously, and then went into the ones that I hadn't, which were Part 5 and, of course, Part 6, because I was leading up to that. As with most of my videos, I try to avoid spoilers at all costs. If there are spoilers, I save them for the end, and I put up a little banner at the top to let people know that there's going to be spoilers there. I really want to make sure that I don't screw up somebody's experience checking out a film for the first time. Even if the film's 30 years old, there's a lot of times people just haven't seen those. So for this one, where I wrap up the overall franchise as a whole, this is where there will definitely be spoilers, even for Part 6. So if, you've been warned, and if you haven't seen all of those titles, check them out, see what you think, come back to this video, it's all good. So, now that all of that is out of the way, this little alternate opening of mine, let's dive into Scream, 1996 through 2023 so far, because, it's not just a franchise, it's horror, and as we all know with horror, they want to make as many as people will want to watch. Whether they succeed or not, that's another thing entirely. So, revisiting the original from 1996 was pretty good. And I only say pretty good because the issue that it had was I'd seen it so many times. I kind of remembered most of it beat by beat. And as I said in that review, I did love that motive, so that really, I just loved about it. Even though I kind of knew everything inside and out, I loved having Stu and Billy be those killers. And, I thought it was a great way to mix it up from the rest of, the slasher genre. We get these great misdirects because of that. We get, also with this, these horror film references, as comparisons for the film and within the film by our, film geek Randy. They had a great balance of all things in it, in my opinion. It's a perfect film. Parts 2 and 3, though, they had lost me a bit because I feel like they were leaning into breaking that fourth wall and that self-referential horror movie stuff a little bit too much for my liking. And then, of course, he threw in some comedic moments that I just felt was derailing me from the importance of what was happening in the story, more than any of the comedy that they had in the first one, which it was littered throughout the first one, but I feel like they used it right. But the motive in Part 2 was great, bringing Billy's mother into it. And with Part 3, with Sydney's, I think it was her brother or somebody else loosely related. I honestly forgot because with Part 3, it didn't really sit well with me, so I'm already starting to forget some details. But I remember, even though I felt that they had a lot of pacing issues and they did some things that kind of pulled me too far from the story, I did still find some enjoyment in them. So it's cool kind of checking those out again and giving them another chance, even if ultimately, I didn't care for them. Part 4, I think was a great step back towards the original, trying to give us these great kills, great mystery. The motive was a bit of a reach, because I mentioned that with the Stu and Billy dynamic, it worked well for me because I was able to buy into it due to, one, Billy having this true motive because of the situation with his mother, and the other one, Stu, being crazy and easily manipulated, so he kind of gets used and brought into this to help carry this plan out. But in Part 4, it felt like it was just two crazy teenagers agreeing to go on a killing spree due to their love of horror and wanting popularity and everything. As Billy said,
Sid, don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!
So I didn't really buy into it as much. However, it was still a lot of fun after 11 years, to kind of see that path that they're taking towards something better. And I'm honestly surprised that it took another 11 years to bring us to Scream 5, also known simply as Scream, which is confusing but also represents a way to kind of go back to its roots, kind of the way that Candyman did, the Nia DaCosta one. So while there were still, a bit weak on the motive, at least we had a lot more going on around it. We got Billy's daughter, her potentially becoming a killer, struggling with those issues, and this house from the original film. But the two killers, especially the fact that one of them was, with Billy's daughter, it was quite the reach that this would be planned that way, that they would find each other, agree on this plan, orchestrate it, bring everything back to Woodsboro and execute it. It was definitely a bit of a reach. But luckily, everything else going on around it really made up for any of those complaints, you know. Outside of that, my only complaint, as mentioned in the Scream 6 video, was the lack of Jenna Ortega. But again, that's just because I loved Wednesday and I just listened to her on an Armchair Expert episode, so I really wanted to see more of her. That's all on me. I don't think anybody else would have cared that much. But what I did care about, though, was Dewey. You know, seeing him on a downward spiral of sorts, tormented, down in the dumps, and ultimately being taken out. You know, it's pretty sad seeing him taken out, because you went through this, you know, so much of this franchise. You made it into the 5th movie, and it was shocking and sad, but it raises the stakes. You have to care about the characters and be afraid for them getting killed to actually be afraid, in my opinion. But and then now with 6, again, you know, I already went into this in a previous video, but for this one there will be spoilers for 6, the new one, the one that just came out in March 2023. So if you're watching this down the line, this is the New York one. Spoilers. Okay. So, the beginning, seeing Samara Weaving and Tony Revolori, I hadn't even spotted them in the trailer or on the poster or anything, so it was a total surprise. And, you know, I love both of them, especially from Ready or Not, and as well as from Spider-Man and Willow. Yes, I sometimes watch fantasy stuff that's geared more towards kids from Disney. But, you know, the direction that they went in with that first kill was exactly what I felt that the film had needed. I really thought we were going to actually get another angle where we know who the killer or killers are right at the start, and then maybe the focus will be figuring out how they got there, or who their next target is, or how they're going to get out of the situation. It may not have worked, but it would have been an interesting thing for them to try, you know, to really swing for the fences on that. So I was actually expecting that, and then when Tony got taken out, I was right back in. Like, this is a great way to put that extra layer and then rocket us right back into the usual kind of opening for Scream, with the call and somebody being taken out. It was great that a killer got killed on this. It was just really cool. And then on top of all that, they pulled away from the 2 rando crazies, you know, from parts 4 and 5. Instead of just random people, we get 3, and not random. The siblings and father of one of the killers from part 5, Richie Kirsch. And while it is a reach to have 3 family members all on the same train, so to speak, it is easier to buy, since, like, maybe there's something in their blood, maybe they have a family history of some mental illness that's kind of causing some of this in a way. So having that 3rd also made sense in that when you're in New York, it's much bigger and it's much more densely populated. If you're going to be orchestrating these killings, it only seems natural that a 3rd may need to be in on it, with, you know, 2 of them being planted right in close to who their targets are. The weird thing I realized, though, like, well after watching this, the core 4 all survived, you know, and Gail survived. I didn't even miss Sydney not being in it, because they built up everything else around it so much. You know, even throwing Josh Segarra in there was, you know, he was used surprisingly well. I thought he was going to be a shallow throwaway character who would obviously get killed, but I love that they never fully trusted him. He was the outsider, but it also made the ending make a little bit more sense that of course he's going to go for backup for whatever they're doing. You know, there's no reason not to get the police involved. So for him to hop off and do that, help all them out, and Kirby, bringing Kirby back as well, which is another great callback, I'm still just impressed that it did really well. And right now it is Saturday night, and it's surprising I haven't seen any spoilers online yet. And the overall reaction to the film seems to be pretty positive. I haven't seen like this polarization that I saw of things like Halloween Ends, where some really loved it and some thought it was the worst thing that was ever done to Halloween. People seem to generally like this. Even if their rankings of the Scream franchise are very different from mine, there seems to be an agreement that this latest installment was a lot of fun. But so anyways, now that I rambled more about Scream 6 than I did in the last video, what do I think of that franchise as a whole? Well, now I can, say I love it. I mean, I would say 4 out of these 6 films so far I would easily watch again. My rankings being 1, 6, 5, 4, 2, 3. And 1 is only on the top, I think, because of nostalgia. There are some things, maybe the scale and the diversity and the settings and the characters and such that I like much better in Part 6. But like films like Avengers Endgame or Spider-Man No Way Home, it just wouldn't work without all the films that led up to it. It wouldn't really hold up on its own. So that's why it had to be second place. But anyways, it is it's like 2 tried to take it to the next logical step. 3 kind of blew it for me. It's almost like it got too popular or something. 4 got us back on track. 5 expanded upon that, and 6 just, hit a home run. So, when I look back on a lot of other franchises that I've either revisited or ones that I'd, seen all of them over the years, many of them, I only have a few entries in each of them that I really enjoy a lot and would always go back for. In Elm Street, there's maybe 4 of them that I would definitely go back and rewatch. Friday the 13th is doing really well. That one's probably 6 of them that I would definitely go back, enjoy those, even if I'm not rewatching the entire thing. I can just pick out part 4 and watch Corey Feldman go to town with a machete, or see that weird dance that Crispin Glover does. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't put that on the internet. Anyways, Hellraiser is a really rough one. I would say there's only 3 of those. Parts 1, Part 2, and the Jamie Clayton one, because it was just such a weird twist in it. I remember kind of liking 3 and 4, but it's been so long, I don't know if I can really count those. So out of, I think, 10 of those movies now, maybe 11, to only have 3 of them is a real low point. Halloween is the same way. There were a lot of things that I enjoyed, checking it out, even with the Rob Zombie stuff, but the only ones that I would purchase and hang on to, and this will be controversial, is Part 1, Part 3, and the 3 latest ones. I feel like Part 1 and the 3 latest ones just create a good story arc, even though people are very divided on both Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. And Part 3 is just freaking weird, and, it feels more like sci-fi. It's really bizarre, and it's got Atkins in it, so you have to like it. I mean, my opinion. I was really expecting to hate that one, and it's one of my favorites. But then there is Phantasm, though. That is a really strange one, because everything about it is so weird and so bizarre. I kind of like them all. I just finished rewatching the whole franchise sometime this past summer, like June of 2022. And then I ended up buying them on Blu-ray so I could watch them in higher quality, and that's just weird because it's such a bizarre franchise. Maybe it's that music gets stuck in your head and it kind of haunts you and makes you want to go back and check it out. So you check out that first weird one. Then you want to see that crazy sawed-off shotgun, the quad barrel from Part 2 and their whole road trip. Crap, now I gotta see Rocky again, so I'm going to go back on to Part 3. And it's just crazy. Anyways, there's a lot of franchise rambling there because franchises can be very mixed. Not just per viewer, but, as a whole. Seldom if ever will people agree on anything more than what maybe the top film is or what the bottom film is. Because it becomes a jumbled mess of opinions and, causing much fights on the internet about it. But hey, to each their own. You find which ones you like it, you enjoy it, and you check it out. And speaking of checking out, let me go and wrap this up, and thank you for checking out not just this video and sticking around to the end, but if you've been sticking with me through all of Scream Week, I think this is video number 5, so it's got to be almost an hour worth of content. If there is if there is another entry one day, I'm sure I will add on to this little Scream Week thing and add that other entry, but I'll put it into that playlist. But on to other things. I want to get back to a couple of other Hammer films that I've kind of had on my radar for a while, and a lot of your subscribers seem to really enjoy me checking out some of those older content, and I've really enjoyed it, as well as some Universal ones, since I just recently checked out Creature from the Black Lagoon. I've still got a lot of titles in that collection to check out that I've never seen, such as original Phantom of the Opera. I think The Wolfman I haven't seen for like 20 years, so it's going to be great to get back in there. As well as some non-horror titles here and there, especially some 80s throwbacks, 80s comedies that just people have forgotten about, or, anything that just people don't really talk about anymore. I want to revisit those, see if they're actually any good. But anyways, that's about all they got. Be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell icon to get notifications wherever the bell is. I think it's about here, maybe. Anyways, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell icon to get notification for when I put up that new content. This concludes Scream Week, and I will see you in the next one.